Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The Hidden Bottleneck in Transit Operations and How AI Can Fix It, presented by Spare. I'm Alex Stroman, Executive Editor for Metro Magazine, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you to ask questions during the webinar at any point, and we will address them all. However, if we do not get to yours, you'll be contacted by email with a response after the event. I'm joined today by Greg Bowe, Transit Manager for Auburn Transit, Chad Ballantyne, Paratransit and Microtransit Transformation Executive at Spare, and Josh Andrews, COO at Spare. Spare's presentations are designed to be interactive, honest, and educational. So at any time, feel free to ask questions using the Q&A portion of our program. Engage with us using chat. We're going to provide insights using a couple polls and share feedback in the survey after the event. So let's get it started. Chad, let's start with the big picture look at what's happening in transit today. We know agencies are under a lot of pressure to do more with less. From your perspective, what are the biggest operational challenges agencies are facing right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really does get to the heart of what transit agencies are dealing with today. I've had the fortunate experience of being able to talk to a lot of agencies, as well as my own history working at a transit agency. And really, one of the biggest challenges is workforce shortages. APTA reports that 71% of transit agencies are struggling to find enough employees. And that's not just drivers. I mean, we're talking dispatchers, call center agents, and admin staff. But despite this, agencies are still expected to provide the same level of service. That means staff are really stretched thin. Dispatchers are juggling ride coordination while also answering calls. Call center agents are really regularly overwhelmed with a huge volume of just routine trip requests. When teams are overworked, service suffers. I think we all know that. And that leads to longer wait times, missed trips, and lower rider satisfaction. So the bottlenecks are everywhere in operations. And they get worse when we have operational hiccups or when there's a swell in trip demand, both of which happen frequently and continue to happen. When it comes to 88 paratransit, NEMT, and microtransit riders, they really depend on these services as a lifeline. I don't think that's any news to anybody, whether it's getting to work, a doctor's appointment, or running daily errands. But when service declines, it really has a big impact on people's lives. And that's always something to make sure that we keep in mind. So today we're going to dive into a little bit how we can leverage AI technology to combat bottlenecks that transit providers experience. The reality is that transit agencies are required to meet growing demand with fewer resources each year. So in a little bit, we'll explore more about AI and about how it isn't replacing staff, but empowering them to focus on high value tasks where they can really make the greatest impact.
Great, thanks for that. And yes, it's going to be a great webinar. Thanks again for tuning in, and gentlemen, thanks again for joining us. Chad, aside from staffing, what are some of the factors that are impacting transit operations right now?
Yeah, so staffing, obviously is a major challenge, but it's definitely not the only one. Transit agencies are also dealing with shifting rider expectations. We're also looking at rising call volumes and financial pressures. All of these things really impact our daily operations. So real quick, first is the driver or the rider experience. I think that's more important than ever because people really expect convenience in every aspect of their lives. Transit's no longer an exception to that like it has been in the past. We're all used to this on-demand economy, like ride share and food delivery and that kind of thing. And honestly, our customers really want the same level of ease when booking and managing trips. So, if the experience is frustrating or outdated, it can really push riders away. And the second, rising call volumes. Those are straining agencies. They kind of always have been, but they continue to always strain agencies. A recent Zendesk report found that 69% of customers expect self-service options, yet many transit agencies really just rely on sort of these old school phone-based trip bookings, with these outdated systems. So that means call centers are really overwhelmed. Riders then also experience long wait times, and then these valuable staff hours are spent handling these routine requests instead of focusing on these higher value service improvement types of tasks. And then third, the financial pressure. It's a constant challenge. Budgets are tight. Demand for service is only increasing, and agencies are expected, to expand service. They are expected to improve efficiency and also, again, keep up with the evolving rider needs, all with still working with the limited funding. So when you combine the workforce shortage with these growing operational pressures, to me, it's clear that agencies need solutions that really help them operate more efficiently. And that's what we've been hearing. And that's kind of where AI and automation can be game changers, sort of ultimately improving both the rider's experience, but also the staff's experience, because both of those are very important.
Great. Well, let's bring the audience into this discussion. We have a poll. Where do you see the biggest challenges in your agency? I'll give you a couple minutes there, a couple seconds there to answer. Give another couple of quick seconds here. This was kind of fun. This was like watching a horse race come through. I thought budget constraints had it all alone, but workforce shortages came up to tie. Guys, can you give a little perspective on kind of on those two things? I mean, it really hits the first 2 points that you've discussed already.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this really reflects kind of what we were just talking about. I mean, these are things that we're seeing, and it's good to see this reinforced, and also what the feedback is for sure. We're definitely seeing these constraints, the workforce and the budget constraints.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of talked about the challenges agencies are facing, let's shift gears a little bit and look at the solutions and maybe the reason many people are here today. Josh, we know that AI is playing a growing role in transit operations, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, Chad mentioned that, we have riders expecting more than ever. The poll here shows that and reinforces that their workforce shortages are a constant challenge, and we know that ebbs and flows through the years, but something that we can generally depend on. That it's going to be a challenge on the workforce front. And then now we have budgets being tighter than ever, and I think if this was just happening in isolation, we'd feel a bit lost and trying to figure out what to do. But luckily, we have these three kind of main trends happening at the same time as technology releasing some of the fastest improvements in history, and I think AI is really at the center of that. And so we see that AI-powered transit is really at the center of the future of transit. And it's been around for decades, really, AI has been. So I think I want to first kind of demystify that a little bit. For a long time, we've seen AI really, powering things from predictive analytics to some route optimization. I mean, we've been using it at Spare since day one, really. But in the last few years, we've actually seen this big shift, and it's kind of crossed this tipping point. And the main reason for that is because of a new form of AI that is called generative AI. And so up until now, AI has been mostly kind of looking at the past, like using past data and trying to help you understand that more. But now AI is able to actually synthesize this data and turn it into new content and generate new content that it's just not been possible before. And so it's been useful for many companies and in the private world a lot. And now we're trying to see how we can bring that to the public agency space. And And kind of one thing that many people have probably experienced is these automated voice assistants. We've had Siri now for over 10 years, and I wouldn't say that's the pinnacle of AI. And actually, a lot of these past agents were really actually just strung together pre-recordings of people talking. And so while they were kind of marketed maybe as AI, they really were not super AI, and the ones that were AI were quite robotic. But now with generative AI, this has completely changed. We have these more human-like agents that can really respond and are natural sounding. They're actually useful. They understand what you're trying to say. And it's much more, I often tell people, it's much more like AI from the movies. It's what we expect AI to be, rather than what kind of what we've been given through Siri and things like that. And so with this shift, we're really seeing it's more than just kind of what we've seen in the past with better automation. It's actually about reimagining how we design and operate our services and how we can actually deliver them to ultimately the riders. That's what we're here to serve. And that's kind of what we're trying to explore here today, and what I'm excited to talk about from the solution standpoint today.
Yeah, it's clear that AI in transit is evolving quickly, and we're seeing more agencies explore AI-driven communication. I mean, and very quickly, for the industry. Can you walk us through Spare's approach to AI and how you leverage this technology to support transit operations?
Yeah, for sure. So we've actually been deploying AI in the kind of generative form for well over a year now. And the primary place we brought this is to the call center so far. And so this is kind of the first product we've released on the generative AI front. And it's one product called an AI reservationist, if you will, and it's available over 2 channels. It's really kind of what we view as your call center ally. It's available over the AI voice channel, which somewhat self-explanatory. You can talk to it over the phone, and then also over an AI chat channel. That's actually a newer one, which I'll talk kind of about what inspired that. And that's one where you can actually chat over messages. And so to go into these in a bit more detail, the idea behind AI voice is that with AI, we can manage many of the calls that previously would have been handled by the call center, and we can free up those folks to handle more complex tasks. And the benefits here to the riders are obvious. We can get an immediate response time at any time of the day. The AI actually, it knows about their upcoming trips, and so it can automatically provide what the AI thinks is relevant information. So, for instance, if a rider calls in and they have a trip that's coming up in the next hour, we can just quickly, the AI will just quickly understand that and actually read off that next pickup time to help them probably get the answer that they're looking for. It can also handle things like new profile creation or bookings and cancellations. Those are a bit more tricky, but it actually is quite capable at doing that by looking at past data to help try to figure out what our future bookings could look like. But the nice thing is, if they ever have a more complex request, so they might want to speak with somebody about something that the AI can't handle, and that's where the AI knows that that's often a likely outcome, and it can just transfer to the human contact center. And so one interesting thing that we've learned as we've been deploying this is that this same AI over the voice channel can actually be deployed across other channels as well. And one thing that we've actually been wanting to help our agencies partners work on over a long time is chat, actually. So staffing up a full chat center is something that a lot of, as we have more budget constraints, is not something that a lot of agencies are going to have the staff to do. But we've actually had a lot of feedback over the years that the call center is not great for folks that are hard of hearing or that otherwise don't want to use the app or the call center. And we actually already send a ton of text-based notifications to riders. They actually already use these more as an inbound method of communication. And so we figured, why don't we just deploy the same agent as a reservationist agent over AI chat? And so that's what led to our chat-based agent. So this is the same agent, but actually over SMS. And you can do all the same things, but now you don't have to call it. And I'm sure many folks here probably are similar to me, where most of my communication is actually not over the phone. It's actually over messaging people. And so we're actually in many ways meeting people where they are and providing them this service that previously wouldn't have been possible. And it's cool because it's actually also connected with the notifications that they're getting. So you can imagine if you get a text message about a trip that's arriving, maybe you're standing there and the vehicle's not there, and you're like, hey, what's going on? You can just text back and say, hey, can you provide another update? Where's the vehicle? And the agent will then kind of look that information up and respond. And if you want to, you get to your destination, the vehicle arrives, you get to your destination, and you want to book a trip home, you don't have to go through that. You don't have to call an agent. You don't even have to go to the app. You can just text the same notification or the same number you just got the notification from, and say, hey, I want a trip home, and it will manage that trip booking process for you and get you home quite easily. It's a very natural way to communicate. It's as I mentioned, it's a way that a lot of us probably communicate already, and it's something that we can leverage the same technology for to kind of meet people where they are, and support folks in a way that we previously couldn't or couldn't staff up in an agency. So it's something that we're really excited to be deploying at our partner agencies, and something that we think can drive a lot of value, and we're leveraging AI to do it.
Great. And so, can you, I think you touched on a lot of it, but can you talk about how AI voice and AI chat's improving the writer experience and supporting agencies operationally?
Yeah, so I think, ultimately, this is all about the rider. We deploy these services, and it's ultimately trying to get the rider from their origin destination. And AI is really just a new platform that we can leverage to make that more seamless and smooth for the rider. And so what we're seeing is that these rider expectations are higher, as Chad mentioned, and they're expecting this instant response time. And ultimately, the only way we can really do that is by essentially connecting them to something that can respond and is always available. And so we think this is a really great kind of first step here, and ultimately we'll drive that better service for the rider they're expecting. But yeah, there's a lot of other things we can do as well. So since only one set of tools for that we're really building off of AI here that we're talking about today. But yeah, ultimately it's all about the rider. So it's hopefully is really there to provide a better service for them.
Okay, great. And let's move over to now that we've explored how AI can improve transit operations. Let's hear from a transit agency that has already made the shift.
Every person has their own favorite way to book a ride. There's the most common method of calling in to speak to a reservationist, which might include a traditional IVR flow before connecting to a person. Digital tools like our white-labeled rider app or web portal offer riders real-time access to trip updates, giving them the freedom to book on their own. But as intuitive as they are, it can be hard to change old habits. Many riders still prefer to call in, especially for those riding paratransit services. To help ease the burden placed on call centers, we're excited to announce a new way for riders to book and manage trips. AI Voice, also known as Ryan.
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Ryan. Great timing. I need to book a ride to the airport for tomorrow.
Sure thing. What time is your flight?
It's at 7 p.m., but I probably need to be at the airport at 5.
And will you be traveling from your home on file, 123 Main Street? And is your destination the Vancouver International Airport?
Actually, I'll be traveling straight from work, from 815 West Hastings Street.
Sounds great. I'll search for a trip to arrive by 5 p.m. from 815 West Hastings Street to the Vancouver International Airport. One moment, please. Great. It looks like we found a trip with a pickup window from 3:45 to 4:15 p.m. tomorrow. If you need to check on your vehicle's status, you can always call me back closer to your trip time. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Thanks. That's all.
No problem. Have a great rest of your day.
AI Voice is brought to you by the latest advancements in generative AI, which provide Ryan with access to all the important details when booking a trip.
Great, and let's bring in Greg here. Greg, you've implemented AI Voice at Auburn Transit. Can you walk us through the biggest challenge your team is facing before this change?
Absolutely. Hi, guys. Good to see you. So at Auburn Transit, we had to eliminate the dedicated dispatcher position due to financial constraints, which meant as a transit manager, I had to take on that role. We handle anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 calls per month, which is a lot when you're trying to manage and dispatch. Prior to Spare, all of those calls would go directly to the dispatcher. She booked the rides, responded to voicemails, talked directly to the drivers. All that fell onto my lap, which was a lot to keep up with. We needed a way to take some of the load off of my plate, so I could focus on other important matters, such as helping riders that need extra support.
Great. And I'm curious, what surprised you most about using AI voice?
I would say that the ease of the setup for the rider, for us internally in the office, it just was smooth. It was very smooth. You're going to have learning curves, of course. Spare has always been great. We just sent an email. We had answers quickly. It's pretty seamless, and the riders really enjoy it. It's been a good change for us. We definitely needed it.
Yeah, we've talked about how AI voice has helped Auburn Transit's operations, but what about the rider experience? Have you seen notable changes?
Yeah, the riders are getting their answers instantly. They're not calling in, leaving voicemails, with one person trying to answer that many calls per day. There was a lot of wait time for us to get back to them. And so that they're getting answers instantly. They're booking their rides right away. If they need ETAs, they can call and get that. More than 34% of calls are now simple ETA requests, and AI handles that with no hold times. Our on-time performance improved largely because AI has streamlined communications and reduced response delays. That all benefits the rider. I feel that AI voice, the agent handling a significant portion of our calls, has been a game changer for us. I couldn't imagine going back, and I think it's been a game changer for our riders as well.
Sounds like it's a vital part of your operation today.
Yeah.
Greg, what do you think operations would look like without AI voice?
Man, it'd be tough. It'd be longer hold times for the riders. More calls would be coming directly to the office. So, again, it'd be that delay of getting back to them if we can't answer immediately. I think they'd be upset because of the hold times, and they need to book a ride. They want to book it now, and it takes us some time to get back to them. Certainly could lead to possible reduced ridership due to the lack of customer service, none of which obviously we want. Again, I think it increased costs, as I believe we'd have to hire a dispatcher. I don't see how I could do both roles full time permanently. We would have to hire a dispatcher, so that you're going to increase your costs for sure.
Great, thanks, Greg. Now, Josh, we've seen how AI voice and AI chat are already helping agencies improve efficiency. I think the key question now is, where do you see this technology going next?
Yeah, I think we see this as really just, as I mentioned earlier, we see this as just the start of how AI can help agencies. It's obviously centered around the rider, and these are AI agents that are deployed directly for the rider. But over time, we definitely see an opportunity of expanding this both more for riders, but also more for other folks that are inside the agency and beyond. And so for riders directly, we think that they can be expanded to help them, understand the services better, and for discoverability, it can provide more proactive information, especially around service changes. This is an area that agencies currently do a lot of outreach on, that takes a lot of time and resources, and something that we can really, AI can be a great, assistant for that, essentially making sure that gets rolled out smoothly. Additionally, we can see it being able to be expanded for more people. That's an area that I didn't really talk about today, but these AI agents they're already very multilingual. They have multilingual support. The voice agents are sometimes a little bit less than the chat. I think chat can do over 50 languages, and the voices are around 13. But as the models get better over time, obviously we can now expand this to more languages and support more folks that speak languages that we probably don't support today in a lot of agencies. So again, kind of just meeting folks where they are. And then on the chat side, currently this is available over over SMS, but we see this as a great way to communicate beyond just SMS. Inside the rider experience that folks already have, and over other channels like beyond the agency apps as well. And lastly, as I kind of teased at earlier, we see these same tools being extremely relevant to the agency staff directly. So we're excited to talk about that more. I won't talk about that more today. Maybe in a future webinar, I'll tease it there. We can talk more about how we can leverage these same tools for the agency itself. But yeah, I think there's a lot that will be happening here. We really view AI as kind of the next transition for for technology platforms. If the last one was mobile and then the cloud, we now see AI as the next big transition there. So a lot of the experiences that are powered today, not on AI, will probably leverage AI in many forms in the future. So a big component for what's possible.
Great, thanks for the chat, guys. I think it's very interesting, very timely with everything that agencies are facing. Let's open up before we wrap up for the day. I think we have some questions that have come in. I was curious. I just got to ask. I think it's maybe a general question you guys get a lot, but what has been the response to the use of AI voice and AI chat? There's so many people that are against technology. They're kind of uncomfortable with it. What's kind of been the feedback from some of the users?
I can take that briefly, and then I can maybe hand it over to Chad and Greg. But I think that we get kind of a cross section, obviously across multiple different regions. And I think the nice thing is that we're not necessarily taking something fully away, right? We're just adding more, another channel, another way for people to communicate with the agency that some people prefer and some people don't. And so it's, I think for a lot of folks that prefer it, obviously it means, they get instant response time. They can quickly get the feedback they want. And then for some people, they just want to talk to it. I mean, I personally sometimes want the agent, and I sometimes want to talk to somebody if it's more complicated. So I think just giving that kind of just an extra way for people to communicate with an agency has been valuable, and we've heard a lot of positive feedback kind of across the board on that front. But yeah, I'd be curious to obviously hand it over to Chad and Greg. Happy to hear what you guys think as well.
Yeah, I've listened into a few conversations. It's interesting when you listen to some of the recorded conversations and some of the customers calling in. They don't really know that it's an AI voice or that it's AI generated. I mean, it's very seamless, and it's kind of funny because they'll ask them how their day is going. But it's interesting that the AI chat can answer those questions. It really feels like a normal human, not like a scary robots are taking over the world kind of way. But like it's very personable and pretty neat. And so it's been really interesting to listen to the recorded calls. It naturally flows very well, and they don't get upset if customers raise their voices at them. Sometimes, like some of my call center agents did back in the day, they're not as reactive in that kind of way. So it's great. It's a really natural kind of flow is how we've noticed it.
Greg,
I would say
like that.
Yeah, sure. I'd say nothing is 100%. I mean, you're not going to make everybody happy. So there was a few folks that didn't like it at first. They had relationships with our dispatcher and with me. And so to make that change isn't always easy. But after you explain, hey, we have meetings, there's no more dispatcher, you're either going to have to leave a voicemail and I'll get back to you in an hour, 2 hours, depending on where I'm at with the day, or you can, call and get the ride booked immediately. And if there's an issue, you can talk to a live agent. And so with a little bit of time, I'd say within 30 days, it really makes a difference. They were enjoying it. They're happy with it. Again, you just can't make everybody happy all the time. And it's unfortunate, but majority of the people are happy with it and like it.
Yeah. I've kind of chuckled in my head a little bit when Chad mentioned that they can respond to small talk. I'm sure I've had a lot of small talk with AI agents in the past. It just kind of now realize that it's trained to at least answer me. So that's funny. Let's get to some of the audience questions. How do you create the AI voice in chat? Is this a service that has to be created by a third party, or can we do it in-house?
Yeah, so I can briefly kind of chat about how we implement it. So it's it's something that we can provide directly, so you don't need to go out to a third party to do it. It's something that can be is integrated directly within Spare. So and as Greg mentioned, it's quite easy to turn on and get implemented. It's unlike other kind of user interfaces. Obviously, it's over voice, so it's kind of in some ways a bit. You don't see a flashy new feature. You just get kind of this agent that is now available in the cloud. It's pretty simple and something that is just part of the platform.
Great. And how well does this scale? 1,200 calls per month is pretty low call volume. Can the AI handle call volumes of double, triple, or even more?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So we it scales just like any server platform scales. So obviously we run many millions of trips across Spare, and so that's something that we've had to scale on the server side there. And this also scales with demand. So essentially, if we as we get more calls, the goal is to always provide that instant response. And so the servers and the platforms that run behind this thing, they scale along with the demand. So it's not really a concern in terms of obviously growing more or taking more calls. Just similar to other infrastructure we have, it has to scale with it.
Great. And Greg, for what services you do utilize the AI dispatching services, for what services are you using them right now?
Is we don't have a dispatcher whatsoever. I mean, that's always my number one when I talk to customers. Hey, call in, talk to AI, book your ride there. You can cancel, you can check your ETA, you can do everything there. So we're pushing that as our first line of, because since there is no dispatcher other than myself that is in and out doing multiple things. So I am pushing that as our number one. And I tell the drivers the same thing. Call in. It's much easier, much quicker. You'll get immediate response.
Okay, great. And how does AI kind of handle accessibility needs, like supporting riders with visual impairments or those who speak different languages? I think you guys touched on this a little bit, but if you can kind of hit those points again.
Yeah, I can chat a bit about the tech side of that. So we with languages, it's fluent in a lot of different languages. So it depends on the channel, but with voice, I mentioned I think it's around 13 and growing, and then with chat it's over 50. And so it's a lot of languages. And then one thing that's interesting on the accessibility side, that was actually an area that we were really focused on when we first started deploying this, because obviously a lot of our services are for our paratransit services where obviously we're working with folks that don't necessarily have the same, not typical demographics that might be calling into a call center. And so we worked a lot with the voice agent providers and trying to figure out how we could really meet those customers where they were, and found that kind of an interesting surprise was that a lot of these that the AI essentially is able to understand a lot of folks better than the humans can, because it analyzes the audio waves. It's doing things that we're not doing, and it also has no frustration. It hears the call and can actually parse that information, and if it's for a human kind of difficult to hear or might be frustrating, the AI just kind of looks through that and tries to do its best job of understanding, and responds with if clarification is needed, it'll respond with that. But often it just kind of parses the information and replies. And so that was actually to be honest, a little bit surprising for us. We were pleasantly surprised how well it could respond to folks that might have speech impediments or otherwise aren't as easy to communicate with. And so, we've been kind of positively surprised on that front. And I think kind of in the last point for visual impairment, et cetera, I mean, a lot of the goal of these modes is to provide more channels for folks that can't use one of the other channels. And so we obviously already provide an application for the web and over phones, and we have now the call center, we have the AI call center, and now the chat. And so the goal here is to really provide the channels that most kind of fit the requirements of an individual, because different people have different preferences and different requirements. And in the past, if we wanted to do that, it would just require far too much staff. We just couldn't afford to do it, but now with AI, we can start to actually provide these channels that are more relevant for certain folks. And so I do really view it as kind of an accessibility opportunity for us, something that we've been excited to do. And yeah, there's a lot. I could talk a lot more about that and how we've done in the product as well, but I'll stop there we can get back to some other questions.
Great, thanks, Josh. And just a reminder, if you're tuning in here, there's still plenty of time to get your question in. It's the great thing about webinars, you have access to some great minds here. So please, if you're thinking about something, please feel free to type it in. Let's move to our next question. How do we assure AI is making decisions based on our company policies and a moral code?
Yeah, that is a great question, and something that I think is an important one, and especially as these become more capable and more sophisticated, is something that we're going to need to continue to monitor. And so I think today the kind of, as we were kind of joking a little bit earlier about how you can have some more free-flowing conversations with these AIs, but the reality is that we actually try to do quite a bit to prevent that and to make sure that it really does stay on the rails, essentially. And I think that's the kind of important technology that's being developed. You have the AI models that are being developed, but then you also have all these safety mechanisms that are being developed in parallel to ensure that we can keep the AI on the rails, that it's following the tasks that it's been instructed of doing, and it doesn't kind of go off and take over the world or anything. Like, we want to keep that from happening, and really make sure that it's really laser focused on the task that's at hand. And so we've done a lot of work on our side to basically prompt and build these models in a way that keeps them on the rails and doesn't if you want to talk about something that that's not really relevant to your trips or something like that, we'll basically, the agent will respond with saying, "Hey, that's not my job. I'm here to help you book your trips." And so that's, I think, the best way to tackle that problem is making sure that we just focus it on the task that's at hand and have these safety models and mechanisms in place to prevent it from going off the rails, essentially.
Great. I think that a question on people's minds obviously is kind of the interaction or the how AI and kind of the humans interact. Can you talk about how you see AI working alongside staff rather than replacing them?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a question that's on, I think, everyone's mind. It's on my mind, and I think it's we're trying to figure out how do we bring this technology into kind of into agencies and into the general workflows, and what does that mean for the people that are already there? And what we found actually kind of overwhelmingly to be the case is that people are already so stretched thin in a lot, as Chad was mentioning earlier. People are already so stretched thin, and there's always so many things that we want to work on, but just don't have the time to work on within these agencies. And ultimately means that we can't serve riders as well as we want to. And so what we see this doing overwhelmingly to be the case is that we can free up time for those folks to actually support riders better, to do the more important tasks that less of the busy work and more of the important tasks of providing great customer service. And so we're not really seeing it as a replacement of staff, I guess, just to be on the nose there. We don't see it as a replacement of staff. We see it as really a complement to the folks that are working there, and more obviously empowering them to do more essentially with the resources they have. And I think this is, when you look into history and you look at all the advancements we've seen over time, this is just a continuation, we believe, of those trends. We introduced rider apps, so riders can now book for themselves. It doesn't mean we're eliminating a whole bunch of folks that are working with agencies. What we're doing is we're just providing riders another interface that they can work with the agencies on. So that's really where we see this going, is just being able to do more with less, being able to provide more service, better service, and better customer service for folks that are interfacing with the agency. And so far that's been the case with the folks we've worked with.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. Oh,
yeah, Chad,
go ahead.
Please.
Well, yeah, I think it really is, one of the interesting things that we see a lot of, like call centers. You've got those peak times in the morning when you first open, or right before 5 o'clock when you're trying to take those last reservations. And those are the great times. It's impossible to staff your entire call center to just around those peaks. Similar to your operations, the same reason people use, overflow, taxi or TNC providers on their operations side. It kind of like works like that. It's kind of like your overflow for your peaks. So your staff, you still have the staff that you need, but now instead of putting people on hold for a long time because they're calling during the peaks, now you can resolve those as quickly as possible. And so you're not staffing up just to hit the peaks. You're actually staffing for what you think like sort of the baseline of what your call volumes are. And that's been really, I think, very helpful for folks to do that. And then also, as the AI can do more and more, and as it can take on sort of those, routine reservations, because some people will call every day, book the same trip, same thing over and over again. And so, some of those things are really simple for the AI to take care of. And that allows your agents to, maybe start doing the more complex things, maybe working on group trips or standing order subscription type trips, or even diving into, your customer complaints and customer resolutions and things like that. You can really start to do more high value things with your humans because, a lot of them are really experienced and really know how to do a lot of these things. So, and then the last point is I think no matter how much help we get, there's always more work to be done. I feel like at every transit agency, the work is never just done. We're never just sitting around because all the work is done. There's always something to do. There's always work to be done. There's always ways we can improve. And so this really just helps take care of that simple stuff so that you can focus on those higher value tasks.
Great. And Greg, can you give a little kind of real world, how's that been working with Auburn Transit?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, just like Chad was talking about, I mean, if you have extra agents, it helps on the so for the larger agencies, it can be a benefit. But for the smaller ones like us, where it's the transit manager, me, I'm dispatching some, and the drivers, that's it. There's nobody else. It's a benefit for the big agencies and the small ones. I mean, there's no way I could do everything that needs to be done by myself without the AI. It'd be impossible to be the manager and dispatch, so there is a benefit for the smaller agencies, the large agencies. It works for throughout the transit industry.
Great. And just a reminder, if we don't get to your question during this process, we'll follow up after the webinar. So with that, we have one more question, and it comes in here. It says, does the AI have access to the same information that a dispatcher would in terms of vehicle type requirements, wheelchair, etc., or eligibility for paratransit users?
Yeah, so I can hop on this one. So I think so the answer is yes. I just want to get that out the front. So we do try to provide the AI as much information as possible to make the best kind of determination for each individual rider. And I guess in some ways we actually see this as an advantage that the AI has, is we can actually kind of give it a bunch of information about that rider in that particular instance. And so, for instance, instead of just providing it with the rider's home and work address, we can provide it with the last few addresses they've gone to. We can give it more information about how that rider's communicated in the past. And that actually allows the AIs to service the rider in a more personalized way and actually get to the resolutions a bit faster. And so, for instance, if the AI can quickly deduce that they've already gone to work today and that they need to get home still, it can just recommend that at the start of the call. And so it's kind of an interesting, it's kind of a yes and answer to the question, which is that we provide the same information that a booking agent would traditionally have, but then we can also provide this extra information that would just take too long for a person on the other end of the call to really get it, understand, but that the AI can basically instantly incorporate into its knowledge base about that specific rider. So yeah, definitely an area where we're starting to see the ability to personalize a bit more actually for riders that are calling in.
Great, thanks, Josh. And that's all the time we have for today. For anyone who asked a question that wasn't answered, we'll be following up via email to answer your questions individually. We hope that you enjoyed today's webinar. I want to again thank Greg Bowe, Chad Ballantyne, Josh Andrews, and of course Spare for today's presentation. I also want to mention this webinar will be available on demand on the Metro Magazine website, which is metro-magazine.com/webinars. Thank you again, and have a great day. Thanks again, guys.